Welcome to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm Dan Rowe, and I've masterminded the ascent of local favorites to global dominators. This isn't your usual get-to-know-you chat. We're diving deep. We're revealing the raw truths about franchise wealth building. With over 30 years in the trenches, I'm spilling it all. If you have an appetite for unfiltered tales and the hidden blueprints of franchise prosperity, buckle up. We're diving in. All right, guys, welcome back to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. And today we're going to talk to Ewell Smith, who is a franchise broker. So I originally met Ewell. He brought us a client for Glow 30, one of our brands. And in the process of talking to Ewell, something just stood out different than a lot of the conversations that I had with brokers. You could tell Ewell was successful before getting into brokerage. And I liked his approach. So I thought I wanted him on the podcast. I want you guys to learn about the world of franchise brokers and how they can help. So with that, my goal, Ewell, is I want to get wealthy, helping people get wealthy, right?
Yes.
I want to, in franchising. So I don't want to do dumb deals. I don't want to make money at the risk of somebody, losing money. But it's all, it's about doing good, smart deals. So why don't you, and I think your background helps this part of the story. So why don't you give a little bit about your background and your story and how you kind of came full circle and became a broker?
Oh, wow. So my background, the majority of my career has been running trade associations, nonprofit trade associations in the commodities markets. I promoted Louisiana seafood for 13 years. That was my longest run. And when you do that, you work with thousands of small business owners and entrepreneurs, which is where my passion comes from for doing this coming from a place of service. And I'll share why I come from such a place of service. During my time leading the seafood board, we faced hurricanes Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, and the BP oil spill within a 5-year span. And Katrina taught us a lot on how to deal with crisis. The marketing that we did to help the industry prior to Katrina was always fun. I mean, there's a passion. I mean, love doing it. And it was always exciting. After Katrina, the marketing took on a whole nother purpose. It was about saving an entire industry, restoring billions of dollars in lost seafood sales, and rebuilding an entire infrastructure that was just, nearly $1 billion worth of infrastructure damage. So you learn a few things going through that. And then within 5 years, we had the BP. Right after we were getting back on our feet, the city of New Orleans was getting back on its feet from Katrina. The fishing communities were getting back on their feet. And we were back. And we were back in time for the Super Bowl. And in 2010, the Saints won the Super Bowl. America was cheering for us. Drew Brees held up the trophy. And April 20th came about 2 months later. And we had the BP, the Deepwater Horizon crisis. So we went through the whole process again to rebuild the customer's trust in the seafood once we got clearance that the seafood was safe. And rebuild, we lost 98% of our consumer base globally. Billions lost. So we had to rebuild that. And we did that in 3 years. So I come from a place of service. That's where the service piece comes from. I see the bigger picture. To your point, Dan, it's not about. I'll talk somebody out of being a franchisee before I talk them into it. They've got to have a certain skill set. Of course, got to have resources. They also have to have what I call a genuine interest. And I talk about the genuine interest all the time. That's the words I use, because I got my first ulcer. My one and only ulcer at the age of 24, working for a publishing firm here in New Orleans. And I was stuck in I call it a gray cubicle cell. It's a little cell with the little padded walls where you could stick the paper to stick it to the wall. And I'm like, at 24 years old, I'm like, I've got an ulcer doing something I don't enjoy doing. That's when my wife took a chance on me. She says, you'll go figure it out. You'll figure out where your passion lies. And your genuine interests lie. I was very fortunate. I became very intentional about what she was saying. And that led me to doing what I did for so many years in the trade association world. So I really believe in somebody's got to have a genuine interest in it. And I believe they have to have a certain level of skills to bring to the table to be successful doing it. And if I recognize somebody doesn't have that, I don't want to lead them down that path. It's not the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you said a couple of cool things, including the support of a good spouse, right? I mean, how
Absolutely.
important. Everyone thinks it's the person, but it's usually the person behind the person that deserves some of the credit.
Oh, my wife, she was my girlfriend then. She took a chance on me. When I left the publishing firm, I talked to a good buddy of mine who had just moved out to Colorado. And I said, man, he was telling me how great it was and everything. I said, here I am stuck in this office. And he asked me two questions, two words. After he had been out there about 3 months, we were talking. He's telling me what an amazing experience. And he said, he's just bragging about everything. I said, man, I wish I could go out there. And he said, why not? Why not come out here? Those two words have resonated in my mind. So within a month, I said, I'm going to go. And my girlfriend at the time, Jenny, today my wife, she took a chance on me too and supported me to go make that bold move, to go take a chance and explore a little bit. I didn't have the responsibilities yet. I was a young kid, but it was the best thing that ever happened. And my wife, put huge trust in me. So I agree with you 100%.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Why not is powerful. I mean, why not? It's very powerful, especially if you're being honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's funny because we use brokers, we use IFPG, great leads. The whole idea is that we tap into a group like yours for leads that we don't have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So leads, if I already have the lead, then you guys don't get credit for it. But I don't know why everybody doesn't use broker networks. I mean, broker networks are out there. The better ones are out there, like, really doing a good job marketing business opportunities and success and franchising. And as long as you sort of weed through the good from the bad, I think that it's a great extra source of leads. And a lot of people don't do it because they're short-sighted. They're like, I don't want to give up a big piece of the franchise fee. And they forget it's like, you only get a franchise fee once, where you get a royalty for 20 years. If you get, if Ewell brings me somebody I didn't already have, they're so good that they make it through our funnel and we finally award them a franchise in a market I didn't already have sold. It's like, that's completely incremental. And if that franchisee eventually builds, 10 stores, or they're referring me other franchisees, I'm getting million. I mean, think about it. A Five Guys, for example, a 10-unit Five Guys franchisee pays $1 million a year. Over 10 years, it's $10 million. And people haggle over paying a broker a little bit of the franchise fee. It's the stupidest thing. But what's your take on brokerages and why some franchisors work well and some don't?
First of all, I love the brokerage piece is really helpful. In fact, that's how I ended up getting in this business. I at one point when I was exiting my professional career, I started looking at franchises for myself, and I had a contract that got extended for another additional 7 or 8 months. And when the contract was coming to a close, I said, "How did those guys get to do that?" Because I love the conversation. All I've done is consult throughout my career, and there's so much value that a franchise broker like myself can bring to the table, or other brokers can bring to the table. And we get to know the brands, we get to know the franchisors behind, we get to see behind the curtain, so to speak, and we get to know who's doing the right thing by their franchisees. That's really important. And it's good. And when somebody's entering into that relationship with myself, I'm getting to know that person. They're getting to know me, the candidate. The franchise broker puts that same level of trust in me when I make a recommendation. So I want to make sure I do my job as best as possible when I make that recommendation that they're a qualified candidate, that they may be a good fit. And usually that's the case when we get that far down the line. But that relationship, as a broker, what my role is to serve that person and do the research for them. And I walk them through several steps, but we take a lot of the work off of them. If they have to go sure, somebody can go research on Google and find brands. That can get so confusing so quickly because they start getting pulled in so many different directions. Whereas I can go do the research based on conversations we have. And I also use a tool, I call it Your First Franchise Assessment. And I build a profile of the person. I understand their background. It's kind of like a DISC assessment or Myers-Briggs assessment, but for franchising. We use that tool, and I understand what may be the right match. Then we go through the categories. That creates a whole set of filters for me to go do the research. And I take all that research. I'll end up with 30 or 40 franchises at the top of the funnel. By the time I apply all the filters, and by the time I get to the last filter, which is the territories, I'll go back to the franchisors like yourself and say, is this available? Then that's going to give me 7 to 9 really good brands that may be a good match. So we're starting off on the right foot, and it eliminates a lot of time. It eliminates a lot of frustration. And that process also reduces some of the risk for the candidate because they know that they may really be a good fit for this brand. It's not perfect, but they have a leg up going into to meet the franchisor for the first time, like yourself.
What's your profile called, and how does it work?
Your First Franchise Assessment. It takes about 10 or 11 minutes online to go through. I offer it for free. I provide it for free to all my clients. It's going to build what they call build a profile that's going to give them insights on their work style, their culture that they fit best in, the best match at what stage where a franchise is, because there's growth stages where emerging brands all the way to brands that have been around with 300-400 locations or territories. So it makes that matching process a whole lot smoother.
Neat. When do you say no? Like, what part of your filter, what part of your discussion with a franchisee before you say you're not right for franchising, or you might not be right for a particular brand? And I appreciate you.
Yeah.
You have that sensibility where so many brokers are just trying to get a deal done. They're just so desperate. They're not really doing anybody any favors, but like, you've got a more thoughtful approach about trying to fit the puzzle piece in exactly the way it's supposed to go.
Well, if somebody really, really wants to be an entrepreneur and they have something that's unique and a skill set that's unique and they got a marketing approach that's unique, that in itself right there, that person may be better off being a full-blown entrepreneur going off on their own. If they, and I'll let them know that, if they want to go the other route and have the playbook provided to them, and they're willing to follow the playbook, if I can sense that the person's going to go off on their own tangent, they won't be successful at that.
Yeah, they
have to follow the playbook, and those that do are the ones that you read about that end up with start with one location, end up with 10.
And never go anywhere. Yeah. And that's not the point. You get one location, you buy yourself a job with a personal guarantee on a lease and a lot of your money at risk. Mm-hmm. Keep a job. Just keep your job. And the only reason for me to get into franchising would be to get wealthy, is to start off with a couple and reinvest your money in a couple more and a couple more. And before you know it, 10 plus unit franchise company, you could sell that for like generational wealth. You could sell that for a life-changing amount of money. And so but I wouldn't even start unless you're fully committed to getting at least past 10 units. And you hit the nail on the head. I think 99% of success is just following the system. Franchising is a business of systems. And if you buy Five Guys, Century 21, Jiffy Lube, I don't care what it is, they've figured it out. And put your ego at the door, follow the system. And the better you follow the system, the more successful that you're going to be. So
Absolutely.
Do you have any examples where some folks, you don't have to name names, but any examples of some folks who you've helped and who've gone on to be pretty successful in franchising?
Well, I got a brand new guy who let me talk from a person that's starting out. This guy is a veteran. He left he was exiting the military over the summer, and I introduced him to an emerging brand. And he went to go. He got out the military so he could have more time. Obviously, he's being shipped overseas, several tours overseas. He got out the military to get his time back. He got hired by a major rail company. That rail company, his job was to do logistics, and that means he's almost 24/7. He quickly realized, holy cow, I'm going to be doing this for a long time. Yeah, and he's going to be in that rat race. So he came back to me and wanted to explore. I believe, and he's a veteran. So what that means is the opportunities are there for him. Because 1 out of 7 franchises in the United States is a veteran. They do well, and I believe somebody like him will do extraordinarily well because he knows how to follow the systems and processes. He didn't have the creative piece, but he recognized that piece when he saw it, and he was able to embrace it and embrace this. So he's going to be launching in about 4 months. I'm looking forward
Nice.
with that particular guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but he already started off as a guy who follows systems, and he basically makes sure the trains go around the track on time. So that's
That,
exactly right.
that is the key.
How do you find your prospective franchisees?
2 ways. One, we were out, consultants like myself. Many of us buy leads. Okay, so we get the leads and they come into a system, and then we work the leads. We meet and greet the folks and walk them through the process that we just discussed. The other way is drawing attention, getting attention, and that's something I'm, like so many others, are always working on. LinkedIn has been an incredibly powerful tool for me. I'm in LinkedIn every single day, building relationships, making connections, those 2 ways. And then the third way is getting out in the community. And I'm coming out with a new book. In that book, I'm going to work I'm going to work that book, and I'm going to go out and speak and provide speaking engagements wherever I can go speak. So those are the ways, and I cannot wait. The book's going to be called Your First Franchise, and the website's yourfirstfranchise.com, to be a little plug there. But yeah, so that's going to be the journey, and that's going to come out in about 4 or 5 weeks. So you have to bring attention. And I just interviewed a friend of mine. Now I host a podcast called CloseTheDeal.com podcast, and I interviewed a good buddy of mine, and he's one of the top realtors in the United States. He started out as a state trooper, and he ended up going real estate part-time, and then he ended up going in it full-time because he did so well. He sold $1 billion worth of real estate. And his simple saying is this, and this holds true for what I do as a consultant or any business. If a franchisee holds true for a franchisee getting into business. And he's like, keep in mind, he's in the real estate world. He's like, it's not the market, it's the marketing that drives the business. It's the marketing that drives the success of him as a broker. It's the marketing that drives the success of an entrepreneur or a franchisee getting the attention for their business. So yes, while we have leads that we pay for, it's also upon us to get out into the community and reach out to people.
Well, your second book should be your 10th franchise.
Yes.
So you get them started and get them started on the right foot.
That's
and
right.
The follow-up book is your 10th franchise, because
I love that.
Yeah, owning one unit is simple. If you're the right guy, it's simple because you're just following the system. Turning that into a multi-unit business, most franchisors don't do a great job teaching their franchisees how to build multi-unit business. Most of them that have the systems around cooking the burger or putting oil in the car or cleaning the person's house, but they don't really teach you, like, how do you do 5 of those? How do you build an infrastructure to scale? So work on that. That'd be
Yes.
really good. How do brands better work with brokers? Like, what advice do you have for brands beyond getting over the financials? I mean, we pay, FranSmart pays. We pay the IFPG annual fee, plus we gladly pay most of our commission to the reps, because if you guys have a lead I don't have, like, to me, that's found money. But how, other than that, like, how do franchisors better work with consultants like you?
So everything comes down to, it doesn't matter what business you're in, it comes down to communications. I mean, communications are gold. So when I work with somebody, I want to be in a fluid, ongoing dialogue with the broker, and I try to do my best with that with the consultant. With the client as well. So to keep that communications open and quick, responsive, all those things matter big time.
Yeah. So being quick and responsive. we also find, I mean, we tend to over communicate because if when we get a lead from a broker, it's easy to get caught up working the deal and then going about the rest of your life, 99%, 99% of your life that doesn't include the broker's lead. So you have to actually make a conscious effort to keep them posted at each stage. Otherwise the broker's going to think that nothing's happening on their deal.
I'll take over communication any day rather than under communication, because
Yeah.
if you look, I mean, I'm sure if I went and looked at your computer screen after we did this show, your email inbox is probably, you probably get buried in emails. It's easy to miss something, so you have to constantly stay on top of it. So if somebody doesn't respond right away, well, something's off. So
Yeah.
it gives you the opportunity to go back and check with the person.
Yeah. Any advice that you give people, like, well, actually, what is the advice that you give people thinking about getting into business ownership? Because again, you're unique that you've been successful. I think I mean I think people need to be careful taking success advice from people that have never been successful, right? Like, and I mean I wouldn't. I don't want a guy managing my money that can't manage his own money, right? And
Sure.
so, but what like what do you think?
I I think if you generally have I go back to having a genuine interest in what is it you want to do. I mean, if you have a good salary, good living, doing what you do, is there's a reason why people want to go off and do their own thing. They generally want to call their own shots, or they may be in a spot. I had a guy yesterday use a word that was very interesting. He's like, he's been doing the same job for 10 years. He's like, my job is stale to me, and there's no room for advancement. That doesn't mean you make a rash decision and just quit. You make a strategic decision. You start the educational process. How do you make that exit? And again, it's got to be something of genuine interest to what you do.
Okay. And then where else do you feel like you help prospects? Like where else can you help give them advice or help steer them to the right fit? Like beyond, like, is there anything beyond your
Sure.
filter that helps?
Yes. Well, another thing we help with is if they need. So when you get to the franchisor, at some point you're going to get the client's going to get the FDD, which reveals all the financials,
Yep.
and that document can be a bit intimidating for the first time somebody reading a big document like that. But that document is also the advantage you get as a client, because you get to see the business, what it really looks like, the financials, all those aspects. If you try to go out and buy an independent business, you're not going to get that. You're going to have to completely rely on the broker that's trying to sell an independent business. Whereas with the FDD, it's regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and the whole process is transparent. Even with all that information, it can be a lot of information. So I highly recommend somebody speak with a franchise attorney, not a regular attorney, a franchise attorney. And their job is to help you, guide you through that process. And the other area we help with is referring them to people for funding. And I've got a couple of people I work with specific that helps with franchise funding, because a local banker who does not do, to your point, a local banker who does not know how to do franchise funding may not have the relationships with the franchisor to understand that relationship and how it works. Whereas the folks that we work with know all the franchises we work with.
Yeah. So the argument for using, just to summarize, the argument for using a franchise consultant like you and IFPG is leads you don't already have, right? You're getting leads that you don't already have for areas that you haven't already sold. You guys put your prospects through an assessment to better match the personality and the capital and their interest and all that with the right franchise. So by the time you come knocking on our door, like in Glow's case, you had already been really thoughtful about the group getting there. And then beyond that, for franchisors, it's basically found money, because they can still say no to the prospect. But if they say yes, this is found money. Give them a piece of the franchise fee. The franchisor gets all the upside. So I don't know why don't know why more don't do that. And then for the franchisees have somebody, same thing. You're putting them through a filter, helping them find exactly the right thing, having a sounding board to kind of bounce ideas And, so that you're not just picking one thing, getting tunnel vision, you're actually helping objectively get them in the right business. And then you can help them with things like, understanding what the FDD is and finding a franchise lawyer. And then you said it, the most important thing too right now is financing. And,
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you, people tell me it's really hard to find financing right now. I'm not finding that. Like, I think that there's plenty of access to capital if you know where to go look.
That's right.
You can't look in the places that you looked at yesterday. You got to know where to go.
That's right. And there's one word that sums all this up. It's called relationship. And when I introduce somebody to the franchisor, it's important to understand that's a potential relationship that they'll develop. So it's important for a client to understand when they're going through this process, it's not just about them going to buy a franchise. They're looking to invest in a franchise, and the franchisor is also looking to invest their time, energy, and resources and pour into that person to make sure that they're successful. So it's a relationship. It's a 50-50 deal here in a lot of ways, as far as when they finally get to that point and said, let's do this together. It's a relationship.
Yeah, I think you guys are additive. So, and I'm having a lot of fun with IFPG, and look forward to doing a lot more deals with you guys. Where can people find you? Where do they find your book? Where do they find your podcast?
Okay, so the book's coming out, so it's about 4 or 5 weeks away. yourfirstfranchise.com, yourfirstfranchise.com. And the podcast is called closethedeal.com podcast. And I have special episodes. I interview entrepreneurs and I interview franchisors. And I have special episodes that are part of the closethedeal.com podcast called Your First Franchise.
Good. Well, awesome. Glad we got to know a little bit more about you. Thanks for doing Smart Franchising with FranSmart. And we're going to definitely stay in touch as we do a lot more deals together. Let's keep checking in like this.
Dan, I appreciate it. This has been fun. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon. Hey, thanks for tuning in to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm your host, Dan Rowe. If you enjoyed today's episode, this podcast is only going to get better. Please like, comment, and subscribe to hear more from the most successful franchisors and franchisees, and we'll see you next time.